honestly, it's funny because I don't even know that I had a very clear, it was just like, well, at 30, I guess you're married and you have children or you're going to have children. I mean, if you ask anyone in Mexico, then I'm what people think of as quedada.
Yeah.
But, you have like stable career, I guess, stable income, I guess. You've got it all figured out and you're essentially just in your best moment. I don't know. I don't even know what it means. But, the reality is that it was based on nothing. It wasn't even based on like pressure from people. Like it was all me. It was all me putting pressure on myself to have a life that I don't know who decided.
Love is to be had, to be bold, to be yours and the world's. Love is to be created by your heart in the light and the dark. Create the love you seek. Find yourself complete as those moments add up to something quite unique. And within a blink, you'll find yourself deep inside your love story.
I don't want just anybody. Can you treat me like somebody? I don't want just anybody. I don't want just anybody. Let me treat you like somebody. Try to top on a Rari. It's forever, we ain't stopping. You the life of the party. No job. Apply that pressure, don't need no straw.
Hi, my name is Ivana de Maria, and today on Live Through Love, we talk about the power of stories and the effect that they can have on our lives, the stories we tell ourselves, and self-love.
Ivana.
Hola.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Welcome to the studio.
Thanks.
You blend in with the wall.
I know. It wasn't on purpose. The first thing I saw in my closet, I was like, seems appropriate.
Happy coincidence.
Yep.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure to have you in here and really dive into who you are, what you're doing, and how you're showing up in the world. Part of that is telling stories.
Yes.
And I tell stories through art and paint. But for those of us that don't know you, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, I'm Ivana. I'm originally from Mexico. And yeah, I always say I tell stories, I really do, but depending on the day of the week, I do it in a different way, I guess. Mm-hmm. On the one hand, I act. Sometimes I produce. Other times I write. And then one day I had this ridiculous idea to create an app. And so I created an app called StoryPlace, which is a digital community where people around the world share stories. So it's kind of like sitting around the fire with strangers, but in an app. So whatever, people get confused because they're always like, but are you in tech? Are you acting? Are you writing? Like, people need to understand you with labels sometimes.
Yep, I know what that means.
And which is why I was like, I tell stories. Because whatever it is that I'm doing of the above mentioned, I'm telling stories or I'm helping people tell stories.
Mm-hmm. This is so amazing. You can say I'm a painter, but I would never call myself a painter. I call myself, an artist or a creator.
Yeah.
This is how we tell visual stories and things like that.
For sure. I think we're all telling stories. Whatever it is you're doing, whether you're an architect, a doctor, a scientist, artist, we're all telling stories. Mm-hmm. Whether we realize it or not. So I guess the question is, do you know what stories you're telling?
Right.
Yeah.
And let's flip it on the inside. Do you know what stories you're telling yourself?
Right. Oh, believe me. I've been doing a lot of thinking on that one.
Right? Something happens to us and all of a sudden we're writing this whole narrative, this whole story that this person was out to get me and this happened. And all of a sudden you just wrote 3 chapters in this book that actually have zero meaning. And I don't know what's wrong with those things, right? Yeah,
for sure. I think as human beings, we need stories to live, right? We tell ourselves stories in order to justify the things we do, the way we live, our, what the choices we make. We all tell ourselves stories that justify and help us sleep at night, essentially. And I do think that sometimes the way, if you're stuck in something, or if you're like unhappy with your life, going back to that question of what stories are you telling yourselves can help you identify and actually change the origin story of whatever it is happening in your life. Personally, I actually did that a lot the past few months, like the last 6 months. I was in a very serious relationship, and then I got engaged, and then I got disengaged, and then it was like a lot of life changes. And I found myself, really looking back on the last few years and suddenly realizing the stories that I was telling myself. And once I identified those stories, I was like, I don't know if I believe them. And then I started, changing those stories, and therefore changing the rest.
And what were some of these stories that you were telling yourself? What led you to that path and then off to the new path?
It's interesting. I think for sure intuition. Intuition has been something that I've been getting to know more and more. And I mean, it's always there, right? The question is if you're listening or not. Because I do believe that the universe is always just screaming at you in so many different ways. And then I kept having these moments. And then when I decided to cancel my wedding and sort of hit restart on a lot of things in my life, I, for the first time in my life, asked myself, what do you want? And I realized I had never, ever asked myself that question. And I mean, I just turned 30. In 29 and a half years, I had never asked myself that question. I never knew you could. So weird, but it was really something shocking. And so it felt a little bit like I woke up from a 29-year nap.
Interesting.
And then when I woke up and I started thinking on the last few years, I was like, it was always there. It was always there. The intuition was always there. I knew, and I started remembering, like, what does intuition feel like? Remember it, because, we forget it. And so there I started identifying a lot of stories that I was telling myself in order to justify being in situations that I didn't want to be. Why was I had this need of being like so busy all the time and super productive and doing all these things? And I was like, why? If you really ask yourself why, and then the why of that why, and then the why of the why of the why, and then you go into a rabbit hole, and eventually you get into, oh, look, an origin story that I didn't even know I was living by. So yeah.
Well, we're letting society dictate. I need to be busy because that's what we're supposed to be. And if we're not busy, we're not living life or doing anything.
I know.
And you sit there and start looking at them like, what does that really mean?
What does it mean?
Because if we're animals like any other animal on this planet, the lion just hangs out on the plains. Right? It's just hanging out, being a lion.
Right.
We're not just being humans anymore.
No, I agree. I think that I actually just wrote about this on StoryPlace. I started writing a lot on the app and being a user on the app. And it's helped me so much. And I recently wrote a story about that called Distractions. And it's about how easy it is to distract yourself from yourself. and I realized I realized that I was doing that a lot. And at first I was like, wait, well, okay. So on the one hand, you have all these distractions, which are, apps, social media, TV shows, content, music, friends, if you want distractions, we're living at a time where they are everywhere and they are demanding your attention as if they're super urgent all the time, right?
Oh, yeah.
But then there's this other kind of distraction that I was because that one I was like, I got it. Mm-hmm. I deleted Instagram every couple weeks. I did all these like mental health checks with my social media and my apps, no notifications, all that. Then I was like, wait, I'm still distracted. Yeah. And then I found this other very discreet, very dangerous distraction called being busy. And I was like, why am I being so busy that I'm not? And of course, it's busy with things that most people would like applaud and be like, oh, that's amazing. Oh, you're having so many meetings. Mm-hmm. Oh, you have so many Zooms. Oh, you're doing all these things. But the truth is, I was distracting myself from just being in silence. with me, like listening to me and just like hanging out with me. And so that's been my most recent discovery.
No, and it's powerful because I love hanging out with me.
Yeah.
I'm not saying all my conversations were always so healthy. They're much healthier now. And my wife also loves hanging out with her. So it was important for me in a relationship that I find someone that likes to hang out with themselves also. But there's a lot of people that don't like to hang out with themselves and they can't have that alone time. And they do try to get busy and validate, well, this busyness is going to prove this and keep me busy, not to think about me, not to talk with me, and avoid everything.
Right.
And one of those things was like, let me just go to the gym for 6 hours and train because then I'm going to be busy. So there's all kinds of ways to distract ourselves. So that's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think hanging out with yourself is one of the most difficult things. But then once you do it, you're like, oh, it's just me. But I don't think many people know themselves to that extent. And silence is something that I've also recently been thinking about a lot. The value of silence and how much you can say through silence. And I actually started looking into these art exhibitions and different kinds of exhibitions. There was this artist, I forgot her name, but she did this exhibition where she was just sitting and holding space for people who were coming and sitting in front of her in complete silence. And she sat there in silence for I don't know how many days.
Wow.
And it was so powerful. And then I think her ex-partner that she hadn't seen in like years and years was one of the people that came to the exhibition and sat in front of her. And the whole time she never moved. She never moved. She never did anything. And when he sat there was just tears. And her whole thing, and there was just, even whenever you watched her in silence, it was like watching the most interesting movie. Like there was so much happening, And so anyway, I've been thinking a lot about the power of silence and how sometimes you can say so much more with it than...
Totally. Like how much is happening that we don't notice because we're constantly trying to talk or be busy or get distracted.
Yeah. It's very easy to be busy doing nothing and even sometimes doing something. And then, and it doesn't mean that being busy is wrong or, it's just like, what's your intention to be busy? If it's really because, you're, I don't know, at a moment of your career where like, this is what you want and you're super focused and excited, great. But are you being busy just to distract yourself, is the question. And I was.
But like right now we're busy in this conversation. So that's a true thing that's happening.
Yeah.
But, then later you can, I was too busy to reply to you. But what were you really doing? You were avoiding replying to the person. So it's like really easy to say, I was too busy or I'm busy instead of saying, hey, I didn't want to reply to you. I'll get to you later. Acknowledge that.
Yeah.
So I always find that interesting too, because that's up to me. Like I should actually tell the person I'm not replying because I don't want to reply to you right now.
Right. That's a very difficult thing. I mean, being that direct with people, I wish we would all be like that, but it's the hardest thing.
Mm-hmm. But we're not direct with ourselves.
Exactly.
So you said you asked yourself, what do I want?
Yeah. How
many other questions have you not asked yourself that you haven't given yourself permission to?
A lot. Once you open that box of, things that you've never even thought about. I mean, a lot. I think that with the question of what do you want, comes a lot of other things. For example, expectations, which is another story I wrote on StoryPlace recently. I wrote a lot about how I was living a lot based on expectations. And what were these expectations made up of? I don't know, like society, family, religion, whatever it is, like things, the things we see on movies. So even like the content we consume, all of these things shape these expectations about how your life is supposed to be like, or how success looks like, or what, whatever you think of. And I think that, at least for me, when I turned 30, I was like, wow, this is entirely not how I expected my life to be at 30. And it was very hard to not have that thought be like disturbing or annoying. And I was like, why am I annoyed by this? Like, who cares if my life is not what I thought it would be like when I'm 30, Mm-hmm. And when I really got really understood the expectations that I was setting up for myself and understanding that they were based on nothing, I was actually like, okay, fine. Then what does my life look like? And I realized it was actually beautiful. But I wasn't able to see that because I was so clouded by just focusing on the fact that it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. So yeah, it's been a very interesting time of my life.
Yeah. And I'm curious, what was the definition, or what did it look like that you thought it should have looked like? And where did that come from, actually?
Right. I mean, honestly, it's funny because I don't even know that I had a very clear, it was just like, well, at 30, I guess you're married and you have children, or you're going to have children. I mean, if you ask anyone in Mexico, then I'm what people think of as quedada.
Yeah.
But, you have like stable career, I guess, stable income, I guess. You've got it all figured out and you're essentially just in your best moment. I don't know. I don't even know what it means. But, the reality is that it was based on nothing. It wasn't even based on like pressure from people. Like, it was all me. It was all me putting pressure on myself to have a life that I don't know who decided. So yeah, and what we were talking about the being busy thing, I think that we're also living at a time, at least I'm seeing with a lot of people around me and friends, and where suddenly this whole idea of, busy is good. It's not necessarily the truth. Mm-hmm. One of the things I realized when I asked myself, what do you want? Was that I didn't want to be that busy. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to grow everything that I had and all the businesses, and I didn't want StoryPlace to become like the next Instagram. I didn't want that. I just wanted to, I wanted peace. I wanted peace of mind. I wanted to be happy. I wanted to enjoy my days. I wanted to have time for me. There's this story about a fisherman. I don't know if you've heard it. Have you heard it? No. Story about a fisherman. And this story represented everything for me this moment. It's a very short story. But basically, there's this fisherman that is, laying in a hammock at 1 p.m. in wherever town he's in. And the mayor of the town comes by and he sees him and he's like, what are you doing? Why are you sleeping? And he goes, oh, well, I went in the morning, I fished, I'm done. He's like, but what do you mean? It's 1 p.m. You still have like a good 3-4 hours of like good fishing. Why aren't you out there? He's like, well, I caught some fish. I came back. I sold some fish. I ate some fish. Like, I'm good. It's like, but you can still fish more. He's like, for what? Well, then if you fish more, you can sell more. He's like, and then what? Well, then you can, make more money. And he's like, maybe you can buy more boats and have a fleet of boats. And then you can have a team and have a whole company about fishing. He's like, and then what? Well, then one day maybe you can retire and sell your company and enjoy your days. He's like, kind of like how I'm doing now. So
yeah,
that to me was like, yes, like I don't want to be on this like eternal like pursuit of success without even having defined what success means for you. I think that is a lot of how older generations were functioning. And I want to believe at least that there is some form of awakening happening right now where people are understanding that success and happiness and the value of things are not that anymore, I don't know.
The house with the white picket fence and the 2 kids in private school, that American dream.
That we see in movies.
It's the way I always looked at it is like a lot of that is nice. It's nice to aspire to things. But if it's not you, it's not you. And to me, as a previous homeowner, it's like you own the house, you're stuck in a debt. And if you wanted to just get up and move, you got to sell the thing. You can't just get up and move. So like it really does constrain you to something. And then from there, it's like, well, now I'm a cog in the system.
Right.
I'm not saying I'm against systems or anything, but like, how do we navigate life like we're supposed to, freely? And doesn't mean I won't own a home again.
Right. But it's like, what's important to you? How do you define your happiness, your success,
I want it because I want it for me to raise my kids in it. Not because I am successful because I own a home. And I can show you that I own a home. Check out my keys, come to my house. There's 2 ways to look at that, right? And I operated previously out of the first.
And what changed?
what changed? I lost everything and I realized I'm still me
Yeah.
and I get to hang out with myself, and those things shouldn't define who I am.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm changing the story.
And it comes back to spending time with yourself to actually know those answers and figure those things out. Yeah, I've been enjoying spending time with myself a lot, actually.
Well, we've had 2 years of spending time with ourselves, right? This pandemic.
I don't think I did, actually.
No?
I was so busy doing nothing and some things as well. But I mean, the pandemic for me was just, I feel like I was a robot. I was like on autopilot. I was just like going and going and going. I had maybe between like 10 and 15 Zooms a day, which like now I'm like, what?
10
like
to 15, even if that's half an hour, that's like you're on there the whole day.
All day until night. It was crazy because I felt this like desperate need to be efficient and I don't even know. I think personally that I was distracting myself from realizing other things. But when that was over, and it wasn't until honestly recently, like the last 6 months, 8 months, where I spend time by myself in my house, and I would purposely, not be on Instagram or on my phone or not even watching TV shows. I was just sitting and I was like, now what? Like, hi, like, what do we do? I do puzzles a lot. My building puzzles helped me a lot. But yeah, I've been really enjoying it. And one of the main discoveries that I had was that you can be your own best friend. That was shocking to me. Because I did this one thing at one point where I started writing a lot. I write a lot, just write random stuff. And I was writing, I don't even know how this came about, but I essentially wrote a list of all the things that feed my ego.
That's a good exercise.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, I'm going to make a list of all the things that feed my ego. And then I went one by one, and next to it, I replied. So like as if you're telling a friend, well, this feeds my ego. What would your friend say? Next to it, I replied to each one of them. So for example, if it was like, I don't know, followers. Sure. And then I would answer next to it like quantity over quality. I mean, quality over quantity, of course. Quality over quantity. And then comments. Have conversations, not comments. And like things like those, from superficial things like those to more profound things about your life, about yourself, about your whatever. And I answered each and every one of them. And then at the end, I was like, wait, how is it possible that these things feed my ego and I also think this? And yeah, like, how is this possible? And then I had this moment where I was like, I can give myself advice? Why didn't anyone tell me this? Like, what? I give great advice. Yeah. I'm like, I'm going to give myself advice from now on. And so I started developing this friendship with myself. That was really nice.
That's super cool. I'm going to have to do that exercise.
You should. Let me know.
Well, because there's a lot of things like I'm great at giving advice,
right?
Helping people through their problems, but I'm terrible at it on myself. But that's a story.
But have you ever actually done it though, is the question. Because we can say that, but have you ever actually given yourself advice?
No.
Right.
No, that's the story, right? And we hear people say that all the time. So no, exactly. I actually sit down as like, hey, Ruben, here's the problem. Okay, Ruben, this is what I would do. Like, I want to visualize going through this.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting.
Do it.
A solo episode of a podcast, talking to myself.
That would be amazing. I really hope I actually think you have to do it.
You put me on the spot.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm excited for that one.
You're going to make it happen. A little nervous, but.
No, it's exciting. You can do a whole podcast like that. It would be great, actually.
We'll pick a few topics. Challenge accepted.
Okay. I look forward to seeing it.
So are you working on any stories right now actively, or is it whatever pops up and springs in your head in the moment?
In what sense? In terms of writing?
Yeah, you're writing.
It's funny because I've been writing a lot, and I feel there's something's coming, like something really amazing, something that I've been like waiting for is coming in terms of my writing. but I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a movie. I don't know if it's a book. I don't know if it's a poem. I don't know if it's a song. I don't sing. I don't know what it is, but I find myself in a moment where I am very excited to express myself. And I feel like I have a lot to say right now. And so I don't know what medium I'm going to say it through, but I'm expressing myself. And so I'm writing a lot. I'm also on StoryPlace. There's so many stories right now. And I started identifying certain stories on the platform that would be great movies, great TV shows, great books, great podcasts. And so I'll reach out to the storytellers, to the people that write them who are non-writers. They're just people with stories. And I'll reach out and be like, hey, like, would you be interested in developing this into something else? And usually they're very excited. They've never even thought about it, you know? And so I've been doing that a lot because I do believe that I think that StoryPlace for me is you know, it's kind of like the place you go to learn about how to live something, or like to learn about life through the people that actually live it, right? So like if you go on it and you're like, I want to read stories about, I don't know, parenting. And then you go there and you read other people's stories, and then you can, you know, you learn about that. And maybe it's something that you relate to, or maybe it's something that you're so far away from that you're like, I want to learn about this. And so I do believe that by having the narratives that are told in the world through content, told by the people that actually live them, I think that solves a lot more problems than only entertainment. I think it will have a ripple effect on a lot of other things.
Yeah, it might give a lot of people permission to go on there and share their story, or
for
create
sure
the story, or apply it to themselves.
Yeah, for sure. And also to have the stories that are told about different communities, about different cultures, being told in authentic, real ways. You know, it's not, I don't know, a 60-year-old white guy in a room writing about being a Mexican mom. It's like, what? No. Like, you know, and so if you at least at a story level democratize, you know, entertainment and content, and put it in the hands of the people that actually have to tell these stories, I think you solve a lot of problems that we're seeing right now.
I agree. And I'm going to have to go on there and really check this out.
Please do.
So let's talk about the app a little bit, because I experience it a lot. I'm like, hey, come help me paint, or why don't you try doing? People are like, I can't paint. I'm not creative. I'm not a writer. I can't tell stories. Do you have prompts on there or ways to get people in the zone, or is it just like an open blog format? No,
there's prompts every day, and there's also a little like roulette dice that you click on, and it gives you prompts, endless prompts. There's so many. And there's also topics like, oh, this week we're talking about this, or people are talking about this. And it's what you're saying is so true, because my target with StoryPlace are those people, the people that say like, oh, I don't have stories. Oh, I don't have anything to say. Oh, I'm not a writer. I'm like, let's just chat, you know? Yeah. Because I think that, well, for starters, the question of what's your story is the most intimidating question to anyone in the world, because it's like, oh my God, that my story, like that one story that encompasses everything about what I've been, what I am, and what I will be. Like, you know, It's terrifying. It's a lot of pressure.
Where do I start?
Right. But if then you just change the word your to and I'm like, tell me a story. And you're like, oh, just a story. Okay. And then I'm like, if I take it a step further and I'm like, hey, tell me a story about, I don't know, about your childhood. Or tell me a story about a memory with your dad. And then immediately you're like, oh, well, listen to this, blah, blah, blah. And suddenly, before you know it, you're telling stories. So, I mean, needless to say, every human being is made up of stories. It's just a matter of you know, for one, it's like remembering your stories, recognizing that you have stories, and then connecting with them. And when you do that, and when you think about your stories, when you tell your stories, and you realize that your story actually helped somebody else in a way that you never even expected. And a lot of times, for example, I'll see people share a story on StoryPlace that they consider or even label on StoryPlace as, you know, a story about depression or a story about weakness. And then somebody who reads it will be like, oh, here's a story about resilience, inspiration. Yeah. And so it's amazing how you can really get perspective on your story, and it's very healing, I will say.
It's the lens you're reading it through.
Yeah.
Love or fear.
Right.
It will take you down two paths.
Those two words. Everything in life, I think, is love or fear.
Mm-hmm.
Always, all of it. Anything you do, you can choose to do it out of love or out of fear.
Yep.
And that's been on repeat as well.
Yeah, you operate out of love, you operate out of fear. Everything else is filler under those two commas. So let's just simplify it. I'm feeling so boisterous right now. Oh, you're feeling love. I'm feeling anxious right now. Oh, you're feeling fear.
Yeah.
Let's stop trying to make too many meanings for it. But the other cool thing that you're triggering for me and I want to ask is, when I was in school, we still had some creative writing. I know it's not happening as much anymore. It's like you go do your Scantron, you learn some commas, but there isn't like open form essays and writing like it used to be, unless you're in an AP class or something very specific. Have you found that maybe some of these people have some stifling because they haven't ever really been able to creatively write?
Yeah, for sure. A lot of people. I think that people, especially younger generations, are so disconnected from writing in general, but also from themselves and from reflection, just reflection. For starters, if I tell my niece or my nephew who's, 14, 15, 16, 17, I'm like, hey, share a story. Immediately, they'll take their phone out on selfie mode, video, and they'll hit record, and they think that they're about to share a 15-second selfie video. I'm like, that is not a story. Like, what happened to the definition of the word story? And so, they're so disconnected from the idea of sitting and sharing an anecdote or like listening. Because if you're with people, unless you're truly engaged in an activity, they're on their phone, Instagram, this, that. So there's no more of those conversations happening. And it's super sad. So younger generations, I find that so much. They don't know. They don't. Even just seeing text, they're like, I have to read? And I'm like, like, this is nothing. It takes like a second, So yeah, and it's worrying. And I don't have a solution for it at the moment.
Writing now, right? You're just like, I used to write everything. I was like, oh, my hand's cramping.
Yeah, I write everything I have a journal that I carry with me everywhere. And I write so many things. I mean, everything. But even when people see me writing and they're like, oh, it's like vintage.
You're old school. Oh,
yeah.
You're writing in cursive?
Yeah. And so I'm thinking about it, and I want to find a way to get those younger generations that are not interested in it. That being said, there are a lot of people that are still very much interested in it, but I think that there are people who like to write or who poetry or who appreciate that more. And I think there's a lot of people who never knew that, because you're not a professional writer, you think you don't write. But that's two different things, which is why I don't cater to professional writers. If you're a professional writer, go on Medium. I'm sure that you'll have a lot of success with your articles, blogs, This is just like free self-expression. And I love that. And a lot of times I get messages like, hey, can you help me? I want to write a story, but can you help me edit it so that it's great? I'm like, sure, I'll help you, but like, that's not the point. You just express yourself. It's like a public journal. And so people write really beautifully because it's real, it's organic, it's not perfect, it's not prose, it's just, when you read it, there's no faking it. You know that it's basically somebody's mind on paper. And that's beautiful. Yeah.
I also think there's another exercise of asking people to write is you're having them really be present.
Yeah.
Because when you're writing, now you're only thinking about this and what I'm doing, and what I'm telling, what I'm writing down or typing into the screen or whatever the medium is to get it out there. But you have to be present to create this.
Yeah. Yeah. And even, I've gotten a lot of people asking me, why can't you should do video stories and audio stories. And I did add audio to the app, but only after you wrote your story. You can say it. It's like a teleprompter kind of thing. And the reason is because of that. Because when you're writing, it forces you to organize your ideas in some way. It forces you to reflect. You can take pauses. You're thinking. The other day, the last one I wrote about distractions, it was so crazy that I was sitting. It was really strange. I was sitting writing it, and as I was typing it, it was almost like I was reading it it was like I was typing it before I realized I was thinking it. And so I was typing and I was reading what I was typing, and I was like, and I was having all these aha moments about my life as I was doing it. Mm-hmm. That doesn't happen if you're worried about how you look, much less, or if you're on a timer thing, or, and so as much as obviously adding a lot of things to StoryPlace would have made it maybe more popular or grow more, or what I was saying, like this 1000x growth in a week, I was like, it's just not, it defeats the purpose, Same way, for example, on StoryPlace, you can follow people, you can like stories, you can comment. You can't see how many followers people have. You can't see how many likes a story has. You can't see any of it. And so, which is like the worst nightmare for any investor in VC, and which is why we clashed. Like, they were like, what do you mean? But how do people, you could get people so much more into it and so much more obsessed with it and so much. Yeah, but that's then that defeats the origin purpose of it, right? Having a safe space to just express yourself, like an app that is good for mental health. Is that so impossible to imagine?
You're having people fall in love with the act of telling and sharing a story versus the act of receiving a like and a follow for the dopamine hit. There's two different things there. Yeah. And if you get more people, it'll take longer, as you know, and you're committed to the long game. But if you get more people actively participating, that's huge. Yeah. That's way more important than, I'm doing it because I'm getting likes and followers. Yeah. It was like sort of like a metaphor of throwing a party, right? And it was like, I had this party and there were people at the party, and I was so busy for a while outside the party trying to get people in the party that I wasn't even hosting my guests. Mm-hmm. I wasn't even focused on, are you happy here? And when I stopped doing that, and I actually dare say I might have even closed the entrance in a way. It was like, people will come and it's like those speakeasy hidden doors, you know? Yeah. But whoever comes, it's because they should be here. Mm-hmm. And the StoryPlace community is so amazing. It's incredible. And people are always like, but how did you target empathy? I was like, no, it's just when you're real about it, the real people come, and maybe it won't be in the millions and it won't be in the unicorns. But I think it's way better than that. So yeah. But you may also, because you said you're going in there and looking for stories, and you've got your producer hat on, your filmmaker hat on, all these other hats that you wear as a creator. And you could maybe pluck someone out and say, hey, let's develop your story. This could be a TV show. This could be a real book. This could be a movie. And who knows where that goes. And now you're helping someone, elevating them. I'm doing that. Right now we have 4 or 5 projects that are in development from stories from StoryPlace. And it's amazing. I love that. I love that feeling. Whenever, there's different ways, right? Sometimes I see a paragraph on StoryPlace and it's just a paragraph, but I saw it. I saw the movie. And I'm like, and I see all of the other things that are not in the paragraph, but that I know exist in this person's story. And so I will reach out and I'll have a Zoom and I'll be like, hi, they're super excited and they're, super curious. And then when I actually listen, all you need to do is listen. It's one of the most incredible qualities. And I know you're a good listener, but being a good listener, you learn so much. Mm-hmm. And if you're present and listening to somebody, you will never run out of a conversation. It's impossible. And so that's what I do with these people. And then turns out, of course, there was so much more to the story. And then that's how I help people or we'll develop something from a paragraph to a script. It's all there. There's so much. You just need to listen. It's gold, and you're not regurgitating Hollywood over and over and over again. Yeah. But that's your 10X. That's your thing. But that's because you're doing it for that authentic, passionate, true to your reason, not because you want to 100X it because of likes or something. Exactly. Oh, it's beautiful. Thank you. I hope you'll share a story. Okay, another challenge. I'm going to challenge you. Okay. So I like to challenge people to write themselves love letters. Oh, wow. No grammar, no prose, no overthinking. Just do it. Let it out. Write it out. and just put it out. And what I'm going to do is read it on the show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I love that.
So will you accept the challenge?
Of course I will. Are you kidding?
Perfect. You could also put it on the StoryPlace.
Yeah, I will.
Maybe I'll put some of mine on there. So that's what and I'll go and I'll sign up and I'll definitely check it out and start diving in there and post something.
I love that.
Because that's how we start.
Love letter to yourself. That's beautiful. Can it be to my future self?
It could be to your future self, present and past, all into one. It's whatever you want.
Okay.
And actually, if you really want to take on the challenge
I do.
to that level, do it for 30 days in a row.
Different letters or the same continuing?
Different letters.
Oh.
You could continue if you want. But also, I say one day it could just be I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And that's it.
You know what we should do? We should make it a challenge on StoryPlace.
Perfect.
We have challenges where it will be like 30 days of thanks. Write thankful things for the. We should do it, and then, yeah. I mean,
let's do it.
We can send someone a hoodie.
Yeah, exactly. We'll pick 3 people. They'll get a hoodie.
I love it.
and what I tell people is like, don't overthink it.
Yeah.
The act of just the first time saying, "Hey, Ruben, I love you," and that's it. That could be your letter that day.
Yeah.
And then repeat and do it. And then all of a sudden you're like,
I love that.
I just forgave myself. Or whatever it was in a future letter.
I think the StoryPlace community would love that. Also, because, and what's really beautiful about it is that you realize that we're not all that different when you start reading all these stories. That we're all made up of the same themes, and it's mostly love. But
that's what we crave. That's what we need.
Yeah.
And
I mean, there's like right now on StoryPlace, there's around like 45,000 users in 92 countries. You would think so much, so different. But because you can translate stories and you can it feels like a tiny, cozy town where everyone knows each other and everyone, it's like loves each other, and it's all through empathy and love. And so I think this would be the best challenge for them.
I love it.
Yeah.
This is official. We're creating this challenge.
Yeah. I got a tattoo that says, "As I began to love myself."
I'm going to get a closer look at that later.
Yes.
I like how delicate it is.
I know.
So you just said 92 countries. I'm kind of blown away by that.
I know, me too.
That's a lot of languages. How many languages?
There's a lot of languages.
Everyone translates across everything?
There's a translate button under each title, and if you click it and you choose your language, it takes if the story's super long, it might take 5 seconds, and it translates all of it to it.
That's 5 seconds?
Yeah, it's fast. Really fast. That was actually the first thing I did on StoryPlace, and everyone was like, "You're insane. That's going to cost you money. Every time somebody translates, it's cost." I'm like, I'm fully aware. But if you were only limited to people who speak your language, I think it's like, no, it defeats the purpose of this story sharing situation. The whole point is that you should learn about other people in the world through stories. And so you can translate stories to any language pretty much. And yeah, I mean, most in the app itself is in English and Spanish. You can, depending on your phone. But yeah, it's a global community.
Yeah. And what I'm liking about that too is like, culturally, we're very different culturally, depending where we come from, where we were raised, what we eat, what stories we tell. But if you swap it all to your language, besides maybe some translation issues, you'll start realizing we're all the same.
We are. We really are. I've been wanting to do these exercises for a while, and I will one day. But if you take, for example, I don't know, a Yankees fan and a Red Sox fan or whatever 2 teams, I don't even know if they're still like nemesis, but whatever 2 teams that,
are.
Yeah, I think they are. And so you take like 2 diehard fans and you ask them like, the same question, like, how did you fall in love with the team? I bet you, and I'm willing to bet on this, that more likely than not, both their stories will stem from one common denominator. Whether it's their father or a family or love or like, a memory with their whatever it is. And once you understand that, and then you're able to start identifying these common denominators in anyone's story, right? And so and that's empathy, like seeing yourself in someone else's story. That's a step towards it. But when you're able to do that and you realize we're not all that different, it's just all of these things, reflect differently because of the stories that we tell ourselves, because of the stories that we live, because of the places or languages we speak. But it all comes down to the same thing. And there's, I plaster the word empathy everywhere on the app, but the way I actually define it in the app, and the only thing I really ask the community to follow is separate reading from agreeing. If you learn how to do that, and even in real life, in your day-to-day, separate listening from agreeing, it's really hard, especially because we're living at a time where everyone wants everyone to be a sheep, and we all need to think the same, and we all need to, otherwise you're canceled or whatever.
Yeah, it's so hard.
I mean, it's ridiculous, but the point is that if you learn to listen and separate listening from agreeing, the world is yours. I mean, you will be in a constant learning path, and you will learn so much, and you will enjoy life more, and you will be focused on other things other than being right. And, and so that's kind of like the only rule on StoryPlace.
Oh, I love that. It's also owning your power.
Yeah.
You actually own your power there. Because I'm constantly in these conversations, and I'm like, why is it so hard for, just to make it easy, a Republican and a Democrat to have a conversation and not start fighting?
Right.
Why can't they be like, oh, I hear you, I'm listening.
Right.
I don't have to agree. And back and forth, and like, but you're human, I'm a human. Okay, cool, let's shake hands. I don't have to agree with you, but I could understand that you also need love, and you also have a family, and you also these, without going into super hardcore details.
Right.
Obviously, there's things that are gonna rub people wrong. But for the most part, the blanket statements of just agreeing to agree is...
Yeah, I mean, even in relationships and whatever it is, like, when do you actually, like, if somebody's screaming at you, if somebody's you're not like that, you rarely get to like anywhere. It's just like you, and I think that a lot of people have this thing of always having to be right. And always, and when you understand that you're not right and they're not wrong, and you just have different opinions, and that's just the world, and that's just life, and that, thank God, there's people with different opinions in the world as well. That's true diversity. And I think that, you embrace that, and everything else can change. Mm-hmm. I mean, and I can't say that I did that for most of my life, and I realized that I was very much in that other end of things.
Yeah.
And I've been making a very conscious effort at it. Even when somebody tells me something that really pisses me off, I'm like, I'll take a second, just take a breathe, like breathe once. That's all it really takes. And then just consider, like, is it bothering you because maybe there's some truth to it?
Right.
Which in my case was happening a lot,
But then ask, why am I being triggered?
Yeah.
And then that goes back to you then, not them.
Right. Because if it didn't piss you off, if there really was, if it was just pure like madness and just nonsense, what you were listening to, it wouldn't piss you off. You would just be like, are you okay?
Yeah.
Like, is everything okay? You wouldn't be like, like with this fire around, like, no. So there's a lot there. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
Yeah. And then also learning not to judge, right? Because then once you start doing the work and getting more tools, it's really easy to start judging and be like, oh, you're projecting on me. And now that's the total opposite. Like, it's a different way of reacting or trying to be right. It's like, no, I'm prescribing this. This is you now.
Yeah.
But again, we're not listening. Now we're doing the being right thing in a different capacity.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I read this book recently called Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism. It's really good. It talks about how, which I started getting into spirituality a lot these past few years, or more so on finding what that meant for me. And I encountered a lot of situations, even with myself and with other people as well, that is this idea of spiritual materialism, which is essentially using spiritual techniques to feed your ego, right? And there's a very thin line with all of these concepts, and like, being like not judging and being empathetic and blah, blah, and not letting that feed your ego and then going the other end. It's like this very thin line that you stand on.
Yeah, it's like that. I'm more woke than you are now.
Yeah.
And now there's this whole over woke thing, and that's polarizing.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I'll have to check out that book.
It's very good. It's a very good book. But yeah, I appreciate all the love.
So we're at that point where I'm going to ask you my favorite question.
My goodness. Okay.
No pressure. There's no right way or wrong way to answer it.
Okay.
You can answer it in a story.
Okay.
How do you define living a life through love?
Living a life through love. There's so much there.
Yeah.
For me, living a life through love is not living in fear. It is living truthfully, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And by honesty, I mean honest with yourself. And loving yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think living through love it starts with you. You need to love you, all of you, the ugly and the crazy as well.
Yep.
And then I don't think there's a way to not live through love once you do that.
I like that. I agree.
Yeah.
And it's a practice, and it's hard. Like, we could fall out of it, and we could easily
I think you constantly. I mean, there's days where I genuinely ask myself, like, am I schizophrenic? And there's days where I hate a lot of things, and I'm like, no, just. And it's not about like, oh, well, this is who I am, because again, the other spectrum, it's like, oh, well, this is how I am, and that's it. It's like, no, it's self-growth is great, and I think self-love is self-growth go hand in hand. But it's about this just being love yourself, and knowing that you can learn. And my sister-in-law told me this once, and it's so beautiful. There's different ways of learning things in life. A lot of times we think that the only real way to learn is pain, pain and sufferment. And if you don't have pain, then you don't learn. And I've realized recently that and that you can learn through love as well. You can also learn through love. Mm-hmm. And it's harder. I do think it's harder.
It is.
But it's very possible. And so once you open that other door and you're like, oh, I don't need to suffer in order to learn. Like, I can choose love. I mean, it's amazing. It's beautiful. And I am choosing to choose love in my life.
That's beautiful. And, one final thing there is, as artists, they say you're supposed to be that dark artist in the corner, like cutting yourself, all this pain and anguish before you can like create your masterpiece. But that's not true. And the way you said it was perfect.
Thank you. I love that.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for being you.
Thank you.
For sharing stories. I'm excited to dive into the app and create that challenge with you.
Yes. And I'm excited for your one-on-one podcast with yourself.
Yeah. What if I do an outfit change every other
month? You have to. What do you mean?
Oh, that's going to be interesting. Where can everybody find you?
Very easy to find. You can go on Instagram. You can go on StoryPlace. You can go on whatever platform you want. I'm under Ivana de Maria. I highly recommend StoryPlace because that's where I really share who I am. You can email me, Ivana at StoryPlace. And yeah, download StoryPlace. It's free. It's easy. Share stories. Read my stories. Let me know what you think about my stories. Thank you.
Thank you.